Did Scary Movie ruin Scream?
I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Like Scary Movie.
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite Scary Movie?
I didn't mean to call you Meatloaf, Jack.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
Here's Johnny.
Victims. Aren't we all?
What's going on, everybody? I'm Can't Kill Dill, lover of all things morbid, macabre, and horrific. If you are also that, then maybe consider disturbing the like button while it's cleaning its room.
I said don't disturb you, I'm cleaning my room!
It was originally titled Last Summer I Screamed Because Friday the 13th Fell on Halloween. Alternatively titled Scream If I Know What You Did Last Halloween. Thankfully, the studio had the Wayans brothers change the title to Scary Movie, which, funny enough, was the original title for Scream. By the time Scary Movie even hit theaters, the concluding chapter in the then Scream trilogy had already had its theatrical run 5 months prior. And everyone was pretty sure that they had seen the last of Ghostface on screen in any fashion, other than that weird Creed music video. But they were f***ing wrong. And people went out and saw this thing. I mean, a shit ton of people went and saw this thing. You know, this is the year 2000, and the 90s had just ended. And what happened in the 90s, there was a massive horror resurgence. You know, a massive, credit of that goes to the Scream films in general. But there was a massive resurgence of horror in the 90s, and it was in the popular culture again. It was the thing. It was cool to like horror again. And it was doing really well. And what happens when something becomes really popular? It becomes really easy to make fun of. Creed. And so with that, you take the most popular horror franchises of the decade. You take the most groundbreaking horror films like Scream, for the decade, and you turn them on their heads and you make fun of them. You parody them. It was a no-brainer. Of course people were going to see this. And I mean, obviously the film was well received, banking a total of $278 million on a budget of like $19 million. It did so well, they had to retire the film's initial tagline for home releases. No mercy, no shame, no sequel. Well, we know how that turned out. But I mean, honestly, if they kept the Wayans brothers, like, on it, and kind of kept them sort of, like, running that show, I think that the franchise could have had a lot more well-received sequels. I really liked the second one, obviously, and the idea for the third one, was in the right place, obviously, but that was also the Wayans brothers' idea. But after the second one, that franchise took a massive dip. But that's really just, like, a whole topic for, like, another time altogether. That's something else entirely. And Scary Movie had multiple targets. It parodied several horror movies and films in general and TV shows from the 1990s. It was just a massive slaughtering of the pop culture. Halloween, The Shining, Friday the 13th, The Blair Witch Project, The Sixth Sense, The Matrix, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Most notably, though, the film parodied I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream, kind of using those films, obviously, as kind of like the plot, to drive their main plot. And in doing so, it might have just fucked up the whole thing for a whole generation of would-be Scream fans. You know what I mean? Or at the very least, those first two films. I mean, you take a character like Dewey Riley, okay, and then, you think about that character, you watch those movies, but imagine watching Scream for the first time, and you had already been exposed to this character, or a version of this character through Doofy. How could you ever look at Dewey the same again? I cannot fathom it. I mean, for kids who grew up seeing Scary Movie first, I can't understand. I mean, dude, that's tough. That's a tough one to get over. And I can see how some things may get confusing or you know, spark the memory of the other so strongly. Obviously, I mean, scenes like in Scream when, you know, Sydney's attacked in her house for the first time and, you know, Billy climbs through the window and they hug and Ghostface has already taken off and then out of his pocket falls a cell phone and her reaction to said cell phone. But it was also 1996 and it was her boyfriend and she didn't know he had a cell phone. If he had one, wouldn't she know? Obviously. But then you think about the version of that from Scary Movie where Bobby drops the cell phone and then black leather gloves, and then the knife. It's hilarious. And I guess what I'm saying is I can see how maybe that memory being sparked when viewing that scene, watching Scream, could maybe ruin that scene, ruin that effect for somebody who's viewing it in that way. And we're talking big scenes too, not even just those, you know, smaller ones, like the theater opening in Scream 2. That opening with Jada Pinkett Smith is legendary, but the parodied version with Regina Hall is hilarious, yeah, but I can see how someone viewing the, you know, the version in Scream 2, but having seen the Scary Movie version with Regina Hall first, I could see how the scene being viewed now in Scream 2 would almost become comical. I could understand that, I suppose. And that's a huge bummer, because that scene is phenomenal, dude. It's super intense. It's crazy. When I was a kid, I was terrified of movie theaters for a little bit because of that scene. And that's powerful. That's awesome. And then there's also the scene with Omar Epps in the bathroom stall when they parody that with Shawn Wayans. You know. I mean, and honestly, I could go on forever about this. I mean, there's so many in there, and it doesn't stop at Scream. I mean, shit, it might have this effect on a lot of I Know What You Did Last Summer fans, or the Blair Witch Project. You know, it really just, it didn't hold any punches. It just went for it. And it made a huge impression. And I feel like it made two very different impressions for the different people. You had people who hadn't seen these films, who hadn't really watched those movies, probably the younger generation, probably kids who were my age, but, you know, I didn't, I was allowed to watch shit that other kids weren't really allowed to watch. Take that for what it is. I'm pretty happy about it. I'm stoked with the outcome, personally. But, you know, and I guess that kind of leads to a lot of what kind of made me think about this, man. You know what I mean? Like, when I'm watching these movies with somebody or talking to somebody about these movies, they'll sometimes get confused with things that happened in Scary Movie. And I'm like, no, what the hell are you talking about? No, you fucking idiot. That happened in Scary Movie. That's a parody. You know, or it's just, and maybe I shouldn't take personal offense to it, but it boggles my mind. It hurts me deep in the soul. You know what I mean? Maybe I'm overreacting, and that's fine. That's okay. I'm all right with that. But it's something that I can't let go of. And more so, it's not that I'm mad at that per se, more so just holy shit. It's a totally different perspective. And I'm wondering if it's like that for everybody. Is there people out there who did see the parodies first, but it didn't really tarnish their viewing of the original film? Like, the original films were so spectacular that it just completely abolished any sort of negativity or you know, just any sort of impression that the parodies may have brought on. I find that kind of hard to believe. I'm super thankful that I saw, you know, the films that were being parodied. I saw all those before I saw, you know, Scary Movie. I'm really, really thankful for that. And even with viewing Scary Movie and that becoming super popular, because even when I was a kid, Scary Movie was my shit as well. I was a huge, hyper fan of it, you know? And I think a lot of kids were. Obviously, it was raunchy comedy, and it was, you know, with American Pie and shit. So that kind of stuff was really popular as well. And with Scary Movie, it was like that, but with these horror films. And so I kind of, in my little kid brain, just kind of assumed everybody else was in on those jokes too. But I was wrong, you know. I thought that people understood what was being parodied, but they really didn't. It was just a totally different experience. And so I can get how, you know, I feel like I'm sounding like a broken record at this point, but I feel like I can understand how that could just completely switch around your viewpoint when viewing these films that it's making fun of for the first time, having seen the parody first. And it's so upsetting. And yeah, sometimes when I'm having watch-throughs of these movies, whether it's the Scream films, or I Know What You Did Last Summer, or The Matrix even, sometimes some of these scenes will trigger, you know, the parodied version. You know, when I'm watching it, it'll trigger a memory of the parodied version. That might cross my mind for a second. But it doesn't ruin the films for me. It doesn't ruin Scream for me. Scream was already such an integral part of my being, essentially, by the time I, you know, stumbled across Scary Movie as a kid, that it didn't really have that effect. I knew what it was doing. I knew what it was making fun of, and I appreciated it for what it was. I'm a mega fan of both, and it never ruined that for me. But I could see maybe how it could for other people. Really what brought it on is just talking with other people and hearing their perspective. And one thing I've heard a lot that really sucks to hear, dude, fucking blows to hear, actually, is that, well, I don't find Scream scary because, you know, Scary Movie kind of ruined it for me. It's just not scary. It's just funny now. Damn, that sucks. I mean, not that I'm scared of Scream, but it's more of the situational horror. It's watching it and imagining that situation. It's scary because it could happen. It's kind of how it is for all slashers. It's, you know, I mean, come on, we're not actually like scared of these movies. Some of the imagery can be disturbing and horrific and stuff like that, but, you know, or creepy, but, you know, it's not really terrifying, especially when it comes to slashers. But to be taken so, you know, not seriously, pulled so out of what it was originally casted to be from Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven is a sad thought to me. And I definitely can't relate, but I've heard that a lot, and I'm wondering how you feel about that, you know? And did you see the Scream films first? Did you see those first before you saw the parody? And are you kind of in the same camp as me where you can appreciate the parody and it doesn't really tarnish the original films for you? And if you did see the parodies first, what the f is that like? Please tell me. I'm desperate to hear your experience. I will talk with you about it. I want to know. Because, again, it's so hard for me to grasp. Anyways, I think I'm done ranting about this. I've probably wasted enough of your time. If you like shit like this, maybe consider liking or subscribing. I'm not pressuring you, just a friendly suggestion about the subscription part. But more importantly, comment, because I really am curious.